September 1944. High above the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a lone B-29 superfortress, a silver behemoth of American aerial might, found itself in dire straits. Damaged and visibly limping, it veered erratically off its intended course, a wounded bird struggling against the relentless pull of gravity. Below, on a remote Japanese-held island, Vice Admiral Hiroshi Sato, a man whose life had been defined by the rigid discipline of the Imperial Navy, watched its desperate flight with a practiced, weary eye. He expected the inevitable, a final, devastating payload of bombs to rain down upon his beleaguered garrison. Instead, to his profound astonishment, a small, white parachute blossomed against the azure sky, descending slowly, deliberately. This parachute carried not destruction, but a package that would defy the brutal logic of war, and in an act of improbable grace, forge an unbreakable bond across 4 decades. To truly grasp the profound significance of this extraordinary encounter, we must first immerse ourselves in the grim, desperate realities of the Pacific War in late 1944. By this point, the strategic tide had irrevocably turned against Imperial Japan. American forces, executing their relentless island-hopping strategy, were systematically pushing closer and closer to the Japanese home islands, each captured atoll a stepping stone towards the ultimate invasion. The once formidable Japanese Navy and Air Force, which had achieved stunning early victories, were now severely depleted, their ranks thinned by attrition, their supply lines stretched perilously thin and constantly under merciless attack. For the thousands of Japanese soldiers and civilians stationed on these isolated outposts, life had devolved into a daily, agonizing struggle against the specters of starvation, rampant disease, and the omnipresent, terrifying threat of Allied bombardment. Food was a precious, almost mythical commodity, medical supplies were virtually non-existent, and hope, that most vital of human sustenance, was a dwindling, flickering flame. The war had transformed into a brutal, soul-crushing test of sheer endurance, where every sunrise brought renewed hardship, and every sunset a deeper, more pervasive despair. The skies, which had once been proudly patrolled by the agile Japanese Zeros, were now increasingly dominated by American aircraft, particularly the formidable B-29 superfortress, whose long-range bombing raids were beginning to systematically devastate Japanese infrastructure, and perhaps more critically, Japanese morale. It was against this harrowing backdrop of escalating conflict, profound suffering, and the creeping shadow of defeat that the utterly unexpected occurred. Vice Admiral Hiroshi Sato, a man whose very being was forged in the unyielding crucible of the Imperial Japanese Navy, found himself stationed on a small, strategically insignificant island in the Central Pacific. His command consisted of a few thousand weary, emaciated soldiers cut off from any hope of resupply, their meager rations dwindling to nothing more than a memory. Disease, a silent and insidious enemy, was rampant, silently claiming lives and further weakening the already fragile men. These soldiers, once proud and fierce warriors, were now reduced to gaunt shadows of their former selves, their bodies weakened by hunger, their spirits tested to the absolute breaking point. On that particular September afternoon, the piercing wail of air raid sirens had sliced through the humid island air, a familiar and dreaded sound signaling yet another American attack. Sato, his weathered hands gripping his binoculars, watched intently from his makeshift command post as the B-29, clearly in distress, struggled valiantly through the vast expanse of sky. Its engines sputtered ominously, a thick plume of smoke trailed from one of its massive wings, and it seemed to all observers destined to crash into the churning ocean below. His men, hardened by months of relentless combat, braced themselves for the inevitable impact, or perhaps a final desperate and suicidal bombing run. But then, a small, pristine white parachute deployed gracefully from the bomber's belly, drifting slowly, almost serenely, towards the island. It was far too small for a downed airman, too light and delicate for a conventional bomb. A profound sense of curiosity, mixed with an almost overwhelming bewilderment, gripped Sato as he immediately ordered a patrol to retrieve whatever strange cargo the enemy had so inexplicably dropped. Vice Admiral Hiroshi Sato was a man of quiet dignity, his presence commanding yet understated, and possessed an unwavering resolve that held firm even in the face of certain crushing defeat. Born in 1898 into a venerable samurai family in rural Japan, his upbringing was steeped in the ancient traditions and values that instilled in him a deep, almost sacred sense of duty, honor, and profound respect for his heritage. His father, a distinguished retired naval officer, had meticulously taught him the intricate art of strategy through countless games of Go and the paramount importance of perseverance through arduous, character-building mountain climbs. From a remarkably young age, Sato displayed a keen, incisive intellect and an almost innate understanding of complex naval tactics, qualities that earned him a coveted and highly competitive spot at the prestigious Imperial Japanese Naval Academy. He graduated with top honors, his mind sharpened to a razor's edge, his commitment to the Emperor and his nation absolute and unshakable. Throughout his long and distinguished career, he rose steadily and deservedly through the ranks, serving with distinction on battleships and cruisers, commanding destroyers with tactical brilliance, and eventually earning the coveted stars of an admiral. He was widely known and respected for his remarkably calm demeanor under intense pressure, his meticulous and foresightful planning, and his genuine heartfelt care for the welfare of his men, a trait that earned him their fierce loyalty. Yet beneath the stoic, unyielding exterior of a high-ranking officer lay a man deeply reflective, capable of profound empathy, a rare and precious trait that would be profoundly tested and ultimately affirmed by the brutal crucible of war. Admiral Sato's early career unfolded during a period of intense, almost feverish modernization and ambitious expansion for the Imperial Japanese Navy. He witnessed firsthand the inexorable rise of tensions in the Pacific, the rapid and impressive growth of Japanese naval power, and the increasing, often hostile, friction with Western nations. He was a diligent student of naval history, particularly admiring the strategic brilliance and innovative tactics of legendary figures like Admiral Togo Heihachiro, the architect of Japan's victory over Russia. He believed with an almost spiritual conviction in Japan's destiny as a leading world power and the profound honor of serving the emperor with his life. His early commands were consistently marked by exceptional efficiency, innovative thinking, and a remarkable ability to adapt to new challenges, earning him the deep respect of his superiors and the unwavering loyalty of his subordinates. He was a strict disciplinarian, demanding excellence from his men, but he was also a fair and just leader, always ensuring his sailors were exceptionally well trained, adequately equipped, and properly cared for. He understood, with a chilling clarity, the immense destructive power of modern naval warfare and the immense, often unbearable, sacrifices it would inevitably demand. He had seen the devastating effects of modern weaponry during rigorous training exercises and understood, intellectually, the immense human cost of conflict. This understanding, however, remained largely theoretical until the cataclysmic outbreak of war. When the Pacific War erupted with shocking suddenness in December 1941, Admiral Sato found himself, as expected, at the very heart of the conflict. He participated in the early triumphant campaigns, experiencing the initial exhilarating victories of the Japanese forces that swept across Asia. He commanded a task force during the brutal Solomon Islands campaign, a protracted and bloody series of naval battles where both sides suffered heavy, almost unimaginable losses. He saw ships ablaze, their steel hulls twisted and torn, men lost to the vast indifferent sea, and the relentless, unforgiving, and utterly dehumanizing nature of modern warfare. The initial euphoria of victory gradually, inexorably, gave way to the grim, grinding reality of a protracted struggle against an industrial giant with seemingly limitless resources. As the war progressed, Sato witnessed the slow, agonizing, and heartbreaking decline of Japanese fortunes. The Battle of Midway was a crushing, almost fatal blow, followed by the relentless, grinding attrition of Guadalcanal and the Marianas. He saw his comrades fall, his ships sunk to the ocean floor, and the strategic initiative slip away, never to be regained. The once invincible Imperial Navy was being systematically dismantled, piece by painful, bloody piece. He carried the immense weight of these losses, the crushing burden of command, and the growing terrifying realization that victory was rapidly becoming an impossible, unattainable dream. By 1944, Admiral Sato's assignment to the remote, forgotten island was a stark and undeniable indication of Japan's desperate, almost hopeless situation. It was a holding action, a futile delaying tactic, a place where men were sent to fight to the last breath, with little to no hope of relief or rescue. He understood his role with chilling clarity: to defend the island for as long as humanly possible, tying up precious Allied resources, even if it meant certain agonizing death for himself and every single one of his men. The days were long, hot, and filled with the constant gnawing pangs of hunger, while the nights were punctuated by the distant, ominous rumble of American bombers, a constant reminder of their precarious existence. His men, once proud and physically strong, were now gaunt and weak, their uniforms tattered and stained, their eyes hollow with the profound emptiness of starvation. He shared their meager, almost non-existent rations, their physical suffering, and their silent, pervasive despair. He knew deep in his heart that their sacrifice would likely be in vain, yet he held firm to his sacred duty, to the ancient code of Bushido that demanded unwavering loyalty, courage, and an honorable death. It was in this brutal crucible of despair, on the very brink of utter collapse, that the B-29 appeared, not as an instrument of death and destruction, but as a bewildering harbinger of something entirely unexpected, something that defied all logic and reason. The package, when finally retrieved by his patrol, contained not propaganda leaflets designed to break their will, nor a booby trap intended to inflict further harm, but rather tins of sea rations, bars of sweet chocolate, and desperately needed medical supplies, a small yet profoundly significant act of humanity in the midst of total dehumanizing war. This single, inexplicable gesture from an enemy aircraft planted a persistent seed in Sato's weary mind, a profound question that would haunt him for the next 4 decades. Who was the pilot, and why, in the name of all that was sacred, did he do it? The act itself was a profound, almost sacrilegious violation of the unwritten, brutal rules of war, an anomaly that defied every logical expectation. For Admiral Sato, the dilemma was not one of military strategy or tactical advantage, but of fundamental human understanding. Why would an enemy, whose explicit mission was to destroy, offer sustenance and aid? The established rules of engagement dictated relentless, merciless combat, not acts of mercy or compassion. Yet the undeniable evidence lay before him: tins of food, carefully packaged and dropped from a bomber that could have so easily unleashed its devastating payload of destruction. This single, inexplicable event became a deeply personal enigma for Sato, a stark and bewildering contrast to the unremitting brutality he had both witnessed and, by necessity, inflicted. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that finding the pilot responsible for this act would be an almost impossible, monumental task, a quest spanning continents and decades, requiring a patience and tenacity that few individuals possessed. But the burning question of why smoldered within him, a quiet, persistent fire that could not be extinguished. He resolved then, in the dying, desperate days of the war, that if he somehow survived the inevitable, he would dedicate his life to finding the man behind this impossible, bewildering kindness. The war, as all wars eventually do, ended, not with a glorious, heroic last stand as many Japanese officers had envisioned, but with the devastating, apocalyptic force of atomic bombs and the Emperor's unprecedented, heartbreaking surrender. Admiral Sato, against all rational odds, survived the island's eventual brutal capture, becoming a prisoner of war, his body weakened by starvation and disease, but his spirit, remarkably, unbroken. The defeat was a bitter, almost unbearable pill to swallow, a profound and shattering shock to his entire worldview and everything he had ever believed in. He returned to a Japan utterly in ruins, a nation grappling with unimaginable loss, widespread devastation, and a shattered, uncertain identity. The rigid, hierarchical military structure he had known and served his entire adult life was gone, replaced by a bewildering and uncertain future. Yet through all the chaos and despair, the vivid memory of the B-29 and its unexpected, life-affirming gift remained etched deeply in his mind. As Japan slowly, painstakingly began the arduous process of rebuilding from the ashes, Sato, now a civilian stripped of his rank and authority, quietly began his decades-long solitary quest. He started by meticulously sifting through declassified military records, poring over countless flight logs, and painstakingly interviewing former Japanese and American servicemen, many of whom were reluctant to revisit such painful memories. He learned about the B-29s, their complex missions, and the brave pilots who flew them into harm's way. He faced countless dead ends, frustrating language barriers, and the natural reluctance of former enemies to revisit such traumatic and painful memories. But each small, hard-won piece of information, each faint, tantalizing lead, fueled his unwavering determination. He understood with increasing clarity that this was not merely about finding a pilot. It was about understanding the very essence of humanity, about finding a bridge of compassion across the vast, terrifying chasm of war. His search, a testament to his unwavering resolve and profound inner strength, became the central purpose of his post-war life. He meticulously wrote countless letters to veterans associations across America, placed discreet, carefully worded advertisements in obscure American newspapers, and traveled extensively to various historical archives, both public and private. Through his tireless efforts, he eventually learned that the B-29 in question had been part of a mission targeting a different, more significant island, and that it had sustained severe damage from anti-aircraft fire, forcing it to jettison its primary destructive payload. The food drop, he discovered, was an entirely unauthorized act by the pilot, a spontaneous, impulsive decision made in a moment of shared vulnerability and profound empathy. The pilot, a young man named Captain Robert Bob Miller, had from his vantage point high above seen the emaciated, desperate Japanese soldiers on the island below, their profound suffering mirroring the raw fear he himself felt in his crippled aircraft. He had made a choice, not as an enemy combatant, but as one human being recognizing the profound suffering of another. It took Sato nearly 40 years of relentless searching, a journey spanning from the smoldering ashes of war to the hopeful dawn of a new era of peace, to finally locate Captain Miller, now a retired grandfather, living a quiet, unassuming life in a tranquil American suburb. The initial contact was tentative, a carefully worded letter from a former adversary, explaining the extraordinary, almost unbelievable circumstances. Miller, initially stunned and disbelieving, slowly, painstakingly recalled the incident. A small, almost forgotten act of kindness amidst the overwhelming chaos and brutality of war. The long-awaited meeting was finally arranged for a quiet, unassuming evening in a modest restaurant in San Francisco, a carefully chosen neutral ground, far removed from the bloody battlefields of their shared past. Admiral Sato, now a distinguished silver-haired elder statesman in his late 80s, arrived punctually with a trusted translator, his demeanor as composed and dignified as ever, but with a palpable sense of profound anticipation shimmering beneath his stoic exterior. Captain Miller, a man in his early 70s with kind, crinkled eyes and a gentle, welcoming smile, was already waiting, a mix of nervousness and curiosity etched on his face. The initial handshake was firm, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of the decades that had passed, and the extraordinary shared history that now inextricably bound them. There were no grand, dramatic pronouncements, no effusive apologies, just a quiet, respectful exchange of greetings, two men acknowledging each other's presence. They sat down, two men from vastly different cultures and worlds, brought together by a single, improbable act of unexpected compassion. The dinner began with polite, somewhat stilted conversation, but as the evening progressed, the formidable barriers of language and past conflict slowly, inexorably dissolved. They spoke openly of their lives, their beloved families, and the winding, often brutal paths that had led them, against all odds, to that very table. Sato, his voice soft but clear, recounted the desperate, harrowing conditions on the island, the profound and unexpected impact of the food drop, and his decades-long, unwavering quest to find the pilot responsible. Miller, in turn, explained his spur-of-the-moment decision, the raw fear he felt in his damaged plane, and the simple, undeniable human impulse to offer aid to those he saw suffering below, even if they were, by definition, the enemy. Their conversation flowed freely, a gentle current bridging the vast, terrifying chasm of war with shared humanity and mutual respect. Sato expressed his profound and heartfelt gratitude, not merely for the physical sustenance the food had provided, but for the flicker of hope it had unexpectedly instilled in his men during their absolute darkest hour. Miller, for his part, spoke candidly of the immense burden of war, the agonizingly difficult choices pilots were forced to make, and those rare, precious moments when one's conscience demanded an act that transcended and defied strict military orders. They found common ground in their shared experiences of leadership, the immense, crushing weight of responsibility for the lives of their men, and the enduring, often invisible scars that war inevitably leaves on all who participate in its brutality. The dinner was far more than just a simple meal. It was a profound communion, a powerful testament to the enduring power of reconciliation and the unexpected, almost miraculous connections that can emerge from the most brutal and dehumanizing conflicts. They talked late into the night, two former adversaries discovering a shared understanding, a deep mutual respect that transcended their past roles as enemies. It was a powerful, deeply personal moment of healing and profound connection, a quiet yet resounding triumph of the human spirit over the artificial, destructive divisions of war. The story of Admiral Sato and Captain Miller, once a private and deeply personal quest, resonated far beyond that quiet San Francisco restaurant. It quickly became a quiet, yet profoundly powerful symbol of reconciliation between former enemies, a moving testament to the enduring capacity for humanity and compassion even in the most inhumane and brutal circumstances. Their meeting, initially a private affair, eventually garnered significant media attention, offering a poignant and much-needed counter-narrative to the often-told tales of vengeance, unforgiveness, and endless cycles of hatred. It powerfully demonstrated that true peace was not merely the passive absence of war, but rather the active, courageous pursuit of understanding, empathy, and connection across seemingly insurmountable divides. Their story challenged the simplistic, often dangerous narratives of good versus evil, reminding the world that even in the midst of conflict, individuals retain the inherent capacity for moral choice and the profound ability to perform acts of extraordinary kindness. It highlighted the timeless idea that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, to conquer, or to dominate, but in the profound courage to connect, to forgive, and to actively seek common ground with those who were once considered adversaries. Their unlikely yet deeply meaningful friendship became a beacon of hope, illustrating that the deep wounds of war, however painful and enduring, can eventually heal through open dialogue, mutual respect, and the shared recognition of our common humanity. After their initial transformative meeting, Admiral Sato and Captain Miller maintained a regular and heartfelt correspondence, exchanging thoughtful letters and engaging in occasional cherished phone calls. Their unique bond, forged in an extraordinary moment of war and cemented by decades of relentless searching and eventual profound reconciliation, deepened significantly over the ensuing years. Though they never met again in person, their connection remained a source of immense and profound meaning for both men, a quiet testament to the power of human connection. Sato passed away a few years later, content in the knowledge that he had finally found his answer and had, in his own way, honored the unexpected, life-saving kindness he had received so many years ago. Miller lived many more years, often sharing the remarkable story with his beloved grandchildren, always emphasizing the paramount importance of compassion, understanding, and the courage to act humanely, even in the face of adversity. Their story, though perhaps not widely known in every corner of the world, serves as an incredibly powerful and enduring reminder that even amidst the darkest, most brutal chapters of human history, individual acts of grace, courage, and empathy can leave an indelible mark, profoundly shaping lives and fostering a lasting legacy of peace and understanding for generations to come. This is the true, enduring legacy of Admiral Hiroshi Sato and Captain Robert Miller. Not just the 40 years of relentless, unwavering searching, though that dedication and tenacity are undeniably impressive and inspiring, but the profound and undeniable proof that even in the darkest, most desperate times, even when everything seems utterly lost, even when the whole world tells you unequivocally that you are enemies, a single unexpected act of kindness can transcend the brutal realities of conflict and connect two human souls across the vast, terrifying chasm of war. And in doing so, they prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the human spirit, when tempered by suffering, hardened by adversity, and ignited by profound compassion, is infinitely stronger than any propaganda, more resilient than any national divide, and ultimately more powerful than any war machine ever conceived. They remind us, with their extraordinary story, that true strength does not emanate from the sheer number of weapons one possesses or the imposing size of an army. It comes instead from what you deeply believe in, and why you choose with courage and conviction to extend a hand of humanity even to an adversary. And sometimes, just sometimes, that single profound act is enough to change the world, one heart, one connection, one story at a time.